You start stifling free speech and you start deciding that there are some things that are acceptable for the government to have you say, we don't have free speech anymore.
Got borderline brawl breaking out on CTV. Welcome back to Moose and Loose. My name's David. Today we got a panel talking about Jimmy Kimmel getting canceled. And who do they bring on? Christy Clark, who gives us a lecture about free speech. This is a liberal giving Canadians, conservatives, a lecture on free speech. This is rich. We also have a moment from House of Commons the other day where they mentioned contacting the CRA is almost impossible. Conservatives break out into a huge applause. It goes on and on. This is hilarious. Let's jump into this. We got this one here. Royal Bank banking for newcomers. Oh, really? Special offer. Only if you're a new Canadian. Dedicated Canadians who've had their accounts with RBC for life. You get nothing special. That's right. They get up to 12% cash back on a new RBC MasterCard for the first 3 months. And you can get up to $15,000 credit card limit and no banking fee for a year. I say that because I've been a lifelong RBC member and I will be shutting down my RBC account because they don't care about retaining their customers. All they care about is offering incentives to non-Canadians. And two, RBC allowed someone to wire transfer $6,000, empty my bank account a couple of years ago without a signature. They just allowed someone to wire transfer and empty my account. I had to go into the RBC and yell at them, literally yell at them, the bank is stealing my money, and cause a huge commotion in the bank to get my money back. Jumping over to CTV here. So Jimmy Kimmel had his show canceled the other day because he said some stupid things, not only about Trump, but Charlie Kirk. And listen to this. So you've got Christy Clark going off on a full-blown rant about how this limits free speech, which is already ridiculous considering the mainstream media in Canada limits free speech and is pushing propaganda of the left all the time. And then you've got Lisa Raitt, conservative, who absolutely rips Christy Clark a new one.
What have you been thinking as this unfolded over the last 24 hours?
If I was in the Jimmy Kimmel writer room looking at his sort of transcript for the monologue in which he gave that joke, I would have said, don't do that. Charlie Kirk was murdered and everybody saw the video. He hasn't had his funeral yet. Maybe leave his name out of your mouth for a while. There's lots of other things to talk about, and don't do that. And so if people...
So I'll just read the joke here. So this is the video here if you want to find it. I'll link it up in the description down below. But he basically says the MAGA movement's trying to do anything possible to paint the murder of Charlie Kirk as anything other than MAGA, which is already ridiculous. They've already found out that this guy was a leftist, a radical leftist. He's not a Trump supporter. That was all Photoshop. So then he says they flew the flags at half staff, and then he says you can see how hard the president's taking this. They put up this clip, and I can play this because it's not Kimmel's show.
Condolences on the loss of your friend Charlie Kirk. May I ask, sir, personally, how are you holding up over the last day and a half, sir?
I think very good. And by the way, right there, you see all the trucks? They've just started construction of the new ballroom for the White House, which is something they've been trying to get, as you know, for about 150 years. And it's going to be a beauty.
So I don't know if this clip is this put together? Was Trump not wanting to talk about that at all? But either way, they're trying to humiliate Trump. They're trying to stir up more anger and animosity towards the right, and they got canceled.
Jimmy Kimmel went ahead, told the joke. He's being held accountable by his employer. That's fair, but I don't actually think that that's what's going on here. Look, I always thought it was an odd business decision for the late night talk shows in the United States to sort of decide that 40% of Americans aren't worthy of being their audience, and they just slam Donald Trump constantly. But even that, I don't think is really what's going on here, right? And I'm glad that you said the thing that you said at the end, right? Which is that Donald Trump said that Stephen Colbert was first. He hopes that Jimmy Kimmel is next. Here we are, and that there'll be other late night hosts that'll be fired as well. The ratings are down. That's true. It's probably a bad business proposition for a lot of these folks. That's probably true as well. But the idea that Jimmy Kimmel told this joke, the head of the FCC, which is the American version of the CRTC, went on Benny Johnson's podcast and said that ABC can either do this the easy way or the hard way, basically threatening to shut down Jimmy Kimmel. And they're the people who are going to be overseeing whether or not these mergers go forward, and therefore, billions of dollars of investment are on the line. It's kind of an easy business decision to throw Jimmy Kimmel under the bus and to make this happen, but that obviously sends a chill. One of the things that I'm looking for and I'm curious about, just as this cultural moment happens in the United States, is what is Tony Hinchcliffe, what is Joe Rogan, Shane Gillis, and the manosphere who liked Donald Trump because he was pro-free speech, as Charlie Kirk was, as all this is going on and people's voices are being chilled because people are being asked to not laugh at certain jokes. I wonder what the comedian bro culture thinks of this chilling effect on comedians who are telling jokes that are maybe inappropriate it, but being done so but at the threatening voice of the President of the United States. It's a fascinating cultural moment in the United States.
So James Moore was talking about this clip here. They're talking about bona fide news program. Basically, in America, you're supposed to have equal coverage of each side of the political spectrum unless you qualify as a bona fide news source. And that's what essentially got Jimmy Kimmel fired.
There's an exception to that rule called the bona fide news exception, which means if you are a bona fide news program, you don't have to abide by the equal opportunity rule. And over the years, the FCC has developed a body of case law on that and has suggested that most of these late night shows, other than SNL, are bona fide news programs. And potentially, I would assume you could make the argument that The View is a bona fide news show. But I'm not so sure about that. And I think it's worthwhile to have the FCC look into whether The View and some of these other programs that you have still qualify as bona fide news programs and therefore exempt from the equal opportunity regime that Congress has put in place.
So basically threatening ABC that they're going to be looking into their business practices, and then they just canceled Jimmy Kimmel because what he said was so stupid. And it wasn't a joke. It's just insulting.
On the whole, there wasn't like an immediate backlash to it from that kind of area of the media. Mm-hmm. Your thoughts on how this is going down? This
is absolutely alarming to me. It is. I can't describe to you how worrisome it should be that the most powerful government in the world has decided that they're going to go after the comics and the actors and the people who offer free speech and stimulate debate, who have always been on the front lines of criticizing politicians, that they can get canceled by the government in a free and democratic society. This kind of thing happens in Russia. It happens in China. It happens in North Korea.
It happens in Canada. What happened to Don Cherry? He said immigrants should be grateful to be here and they should wear a poppy. And then he got canceled. You got Christy Clark trying to lecture everyone on free speech when the Liberals are quite literally trying to limit free speech in Canada.
We have never seen something like this happen in the United States. And the idea that America is free is now, I think, something that we all should very seriously question. When the President of the United States and his appointees can come out and say, we don't believe you have the right to say something that might have offended them on air because we don't like it, not because it was wrong, not because it was libelous, but because they don't like the politics of it. Every autocrat in the world has gone after the comics and the actors and the theater practitioners first. That's what they go after. And I watch this from, and I don't care what side of the partisan divide you're on. This isn't good for anybody, not on the right, not on the left, because when you start stifling free speech and you start deciding that there are some things that are acceptable for the government to have you say, we don't have free speech anymore. And I just think of all of the complaints that people might have against Donald Trump, I would say that this is the single worst and most alarming thing that he's done since he became president again.
The Liberals brought in a WW2 mustache guy and recognized this person, clapped for this person. They broke the law on constitutional use of the Emergencies Act against Canadians, trampled Canadians with horses, have been running Tamara Lich and Chris Barber through the ringer here for years now, massive legal fees for protesting against the government and the government's overreach. A guy just the other day got charged $150 for waving a Canadian flag. Meanwhile, we've got protesters in the streets waving other flags, blocking our infrastructure, and she talks about free speech. We're getting closer to North Korea and China. It's not the other way around.
I don't think that this is the first time a TV personality has been taken off the air because of something that they said. And it certainly has happened in Canada. Don Cherry is a great example. It's happened in the United States with another comedian. Roseanne Barr is an example. You can't tell me that this hasn't happened before. It's happening at a time right now when different people are having very strong opinions on it. I think James laid out the table extremely well. For me, if I had a show that was getting 129,000 viewers a night, that's it. That's what the ratings show. I would take my first opportunity to jettison it. He's getting hardly any views from anybody in the 18 to 49 demographic. That's the people who purchase things. The younger generation doesn't know who Jimmy Kimmel is unless he's doing some hits on TikTok. It was a good excuse and an opportunity for them to retool and, I don't know, put on an infomercial at that time of night. Who knows? They may get more viewers that way. So what's happening, though, is we've turned it into a cultural moment and saying it's because of authoritarianism, when this has happened on both sides of the divide for many, many years. Sometimes you say something and you are actually held accountable for it, and it's done through your employments.
Yeah, I think I sort of take what everybody's saying. I know there's some disagreement, but if I could maybe distill it and throw it over to you, Marco. Like, I take the point that it's happened before.
She's totally sticking it to Christy Clark there.
And I was looking at all the examples today, actually, before I talked about this on radio, that Lisa is bringing up. The nature, for example, of what Roseanne Barr said was a little different than what Jimmy Kimmel said. And maybe the bigger difference that I saw was that it's the president. Essentially, this is like the third example of the president saying this thing that's being out there on the traditional media, which he's identified, and I understand why, as sort of like an antithetical to his point of view. These people should not be saying this, right? It's the third time there was Face the Nation and editing that the White House got involved with, and then there's Stephen Colbert. So employers can make whatever decisions they want.
It's the weaponization of the FCC that's the most alarming thing, right? That's what it is. If you take the 20 most offensive things Jimmy Kimmel has said, this isn't one of them. It's that the chair of the FCC, who's an appointee of the president, said you can do this the easy way or the hard way, and they got rid of him. That's the weaponization of the regulatory.
Unlike Don Cherry, it's a totally different situation.
I think, but Lisa's point is that
Prime Minister of Canada didn't come out and say, and neither did any of the political people around him, we should cancel Don Cherry because
what Don Cherry was saying was true. People who come to Canada should be grateful to be here. He wasn't insulting anyone. He was saying, wear a poppy, show respect to our country. It's a privilege to live here.
Because of things he said that were politically offensive.
I gotta give Marco. I understand that. I gotta give Marco the floor. I do understand that there are differences, but I also understand it's not the first time people have been canceled for things that they say. The difference is that's Trump saying this is what should happen.
Yeah, I mean, I think of all the interventions, I'd be most inclined to agree with where James is at. I mean, look, I think a comedian's worst nightmare is actually not censorship. It's like when the joke is so tasteless that the crickets start asking for their refunds. So, and I do think that like political violence is so polarizing right now. So that's my first observation, that anytime you sort of wade into making light of somebody who was just assassinated, that it will be particularly sensitive. But the second point that I want to pick up on that I don't think has been made yet is that even if the studio doesn't do a 180 and Jimmy Kimmel never comes back, he can open up shop tomorrow, start a podcast, and go out there and pitch his audience. And I think that
I was going to say that he can go do his own thing, and he can see what it's like for the rest of us here, where he can try making his jokes, but he can't say a whole bunch of words because there's censorship on this platform. Or he can try to go on Facebook or X or somewhere else. Jimmy Kimmel had it super easy, getting his big cushy paycheck, a full team, writers, all of that. He pushed it too far. It was the wrong time. It was the wrong moment. That's it.
That is one of the unintended consequences of stymieing him in this particular forum, which is that he will be able to go out there and, exercise his free speech rights and try to, gain his own audience like a la Joe Rogan.
That's probably one of the spiciest back and forths here I've seen on Power Play in a long time. Lisa Raitt was not having it when she heard Christy Clark running her mouth like that. She's like, I'm getting ready to rip her a new one, and she did. Next up, we got a clip here of a Canadian business owner. Just listen to this. This is what it's like doing business in Canada.
We make this stuff here. We source stuff from Canadian farmers, and we hire Canadians. We want to have a business here. But the truth is, our Liberal government and Doug Ford have made it hard for businesses to stay here. They charge tax when we buy the stuff for the products. They charge tax when we sell the products. They charge tax when we pay our employees. They charge tax on the business, on the profits the business make, and it goes on and on and on. So I don't blame Crown Royal for leaving. I've thought of leaving. The reality is we want to make these products in Canada. These are premium beef tallow skincare products, but the Liberal government has made it hard for businesses to succeed.
How many more businesses are going to leave before Canadians finally wake up? Crown Royal talks about moving to the USA and everyone's boycotting them. It's not even that. They're shutting down a plant that was bottling for America, so they're setting that up in America so they don't have to pay tariffs. But yet the majority of their operations is in Canada. It is made in Canada. But goes on to say, yet Carney moves Brookfield to USA. CRA, and nobody says a damn thing. Carney, as chair, voted to move the headquarters of Brookfield to America. Jumping over to the House of Commons, we have one of the funniest moments I've seen in a long time. Well, maybe that's because the House of Commons hasn't been in session for most of this year. You got to listen to this. So this is one of these canned questions where they have some backbenchers stand up and say, please, Liberal Minister, tell me about this, that, and the other. And so she brings up the CRA, and then the Conservatives give her a standing ovation.
Have contacted me and my team to express their frustrations with the delays they experience when they try to contact the CRA. We know that the dedicated employees of the CRA provided valuable services.
Well, that backfired. This is hilarious.
Mr. Speaker, residents of my riding have contacted me and my team to express their frustrations with the delays they experience when contacting the CRA. Could the Secretary of State for the CRA and financial institutions
This is too funny. They did it again.
inform this House of the measures taken?
Look at this. Wow. Really struck a nerve here.
It's nice to see such unity in the House. The Secretary of State for Financial Institutions and the CRA.
Mr. Speaker, thank you for that great question. Mr. Speaker, delays at CRA call centers are completely unacceptable. We all know that.
They're getting humiliated here. I don't know if she realizes, the girl in the bottom right here realizes we can all hear what she's saying, but the humiliation is warranted because the wait times, people can't getting through. There was a report, it's like 5% of people who call CRA can actually talk to someone. You guys are failing miserably. That's why you're getting heckled here. Oh, they muted it.
The member may continue.
That's my first standing ovation. Thank you. But seriously, it's not on the CRA employees. They are world-class public servants. This is a systemic failure that's unfolded over decades. We've implemented a 100-day plan to improve service and access and eliminate...
She's laughing. You can't make this up. I don't know if he realized he set himself up with that one. Does he not realize that?